Alcatraz Island has a long and infamously dark history that has fueled its reputation as one of the most haunted places in America. From 1934 to 1963, this small 22-acre island in the middle of the frigid, treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay served as a federal prison, housing some of the country's most notorious and dangerous criminals. The conditions on The Rock, as it was known, were notoriously harsh, with inmates subjected to a brutal regime of strict rules, regulations, and harsh punishments. Prisoners were kept in solitary confinement for extended periods, often in the infamous hole cells, where they were deprived of human contact and basic comforts. The food was meagre and unappetizing, the cells were damp and cramped, and the guards were known for their cruelty and abuse of power. Escape from Alcatraz was virtually impossible, with the frigid, shark-infested waters and treacherous currents of the bay surrounding the island on all sides. Over the years, dozens of prisoners died on Alcatraz, whether from violence, suicide, or the harsh, unforgiving environment. The prison was known for its high-profile inmates, including infamous gangsters like Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly, as well as the notorious Birdman of Alcatraz, Robert Stroud, who spent decades in solitary confinement. Tales of bloody riots, daring escape attempts, and the psychological torment endured by the prisoners have cemented Alcatraz's place in American infamy. Even decades after its closure, the island's dark legacy continues to captivate the public's imagination and fuel the persistent rumors of restless spirits haunting its cold, concrete halls. The Haunting of Cell 14D in Alcatraz. The setting, Cell 14D, was one of the solitary confinement cells, otherwise known as the Hole. These cells made up part of the authorities' efforts to punish inmates through darkness and silence for days or even weeks. The conditions were brutal: very little food, no contact with fellow prisoners, and a cold and wet atmosphere that could break even the toughest men. The incident, within Cell 14D, during the 1940s, there was a most disturbing incident. A prisoner was confined to the cell for disciplinary action. On the first night, he began screaming uncontrollably, saying that there was some creature with glowing eyes in the cell with him. The guards ignored his pleas, having become quite used to the psychological breakdown of inmates placed in solitary. On the next morning, however, the guards found the prisoner dead. He was strangled, but there was a problem. A second individual was not within the cell. The official version indicates he might have strangled himself, although this did little to calm the rumors and fear amongst the inmates and workers. Many believed that something supernatural had occurred. Haunting. Ever since that fateful night, numerous reports of paranormal activity have been centered on Cell 14D. Guards and visitors described the overwhelming feelings of bitter cold that came when one entered the cell, even on warm days. Some even said they had seen a ghostly figure or felt an unseen presence watching over them. As a result of this reputation, the cell became a magnet for ghost hunters and other paranormal researchers. Theories and speculations abound that he was attacked by something supernatural in nature, possibly the restless spirit of some former inmate. Others say that the isolation and total darkness of Cell 14D must have driven him to hallucinate and eventually take his own life in a fit of madness. Birdman of Alcatraz. Robert Stroud has become known far and wide as the Birdman of Alcatraz, perhaps one of the most notorious criminals ever held within this infamous prison's walls. His life encompasses crime, redemption, and mystique, and his story doesn't even end there, for even in death, it is said that his presence still looms large within the cold, damp walls of Alcatraz. Early life and crimes. Robert Franklin Stroud was born on January 28, 1890, in Seattle, Washington. It had been a life of hardship and violence since the early phases of his childhood. Stroud ran away from his abusive father at age 13 and then found himself embroiled in crime. By 18, he was a pimp in Alaska Territory. In 1909, after he had shot and killed a bartender who had attacked his mistress, was the first time that Stroud found himself imprisoned for such a crime. Life behind bars. Stroud's days of confinement were stormy. First, he was sent to the McNeil Island Federal Penitentiary, where he built a reputation as a violative and rioted-paced prisoner. Following several confrontations, the stabbing of a guard included, Stroud was moved to the penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. It is here that things took a surprising turn for him. 12. The Birdman breaks out. In his solitary cell at Leavenworth, Stroud was surprised by a nest with injured sparrows in the prison yard. He nursed them to health and became avidly interested in ornithology. At the end of his sentence, Stroud had gained a collection of several canaries and piled up work equivalent to volumes on the diseases of birds. He even wrote and published 2 books on the subject, gaining admiration within the scientific community despite the walls. Off to Alcatraz. In 1942, Stroud was sent to Alcatraz, where he was to spend the next 17 years. In contrast to Leavenworth, Alcatraz did not allow him to have birds. At Alcatraz, Stroud spent his time in isolation and continued study but never gave up his interest in ornithology. He became inmate No. 594 and was known for his genius brains and complicated personality. 12. Death and Haunting. Robert Stroud died on November 21, 1963, at the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners located in Springfield, Missouri. However, his story did not end there. Many believe that Stroud's spirit still haunts Alcatraz. Since then, visitors and staff have come forward reporting a shadowy figure, usually described as a tall man in stern expression, always lingering around areas where Stroud once used to live and work. 3. Searches for paranormal encounters have resulted in claims of the apparition of the Birdman being most frequently seen in the prison hospital and the D block where Stroud himself used to spend a lot of his time. Many of the witnesses described parts of the experience as having an extremely cold feeling, or that someone had their eyes on them. Some even described the soft chirping of birds, which would not make any sense, since there are no birds on this island. The tale of the Birdman of Alcatraz thus adds a touch of supernatural mystery to what already was dark in the sense of the prison's legacy. On the other hand, the life story of Stroud, full of violence and redemption, mystery to the end, survives to haunt the imagination of all those visiting Alcatraz, his ghostly presence seemingly calling to mind the refute of the human potential for change and the everlasting effect of what is done. The Haunted Shower Room of Alcatraz. Most people either know or have heard something about Alcatraz Island, the notorious prison hellhole situated at the center of San Francisco Bay. Notorious for its strict regime and brutal thugs, the place has spawned stories of some of the most heinous acts that have ever been committed, as well as spine-tingling tales of the paranormal. From all the scary stories to have mushroomed from this forsaken land, the haunting of the shower room constitutes one of the most unnerving and inexplicable. First to be encountered was the Alcatraz shower room, a community setting where inmates might bathe under the unflinching glare of authority. A big room with lines of shower heads, it exuded a cold and clinical atmosphere. More than anything else, this was a place of no pretension whatsoever, in which prisoners stood at their most vulnerable, bereft of all forms of defense and privacy. These tiles were stark white, and there was a steady drip of water to add to the atmosphere of depression and unease. The incident, the haunting in the shower room, is believed to date back as far as the 1940s. The legend has it that there was an extremely terrible experience by one inmate called Clarence Kahn, alias the Choctaw Kid. One night, having a late shower, Kahn claimed he had seen the figure in the steam. The apparition was a shadowy form, indistinct, and seemed to move with a life of its own. He was so frightened that Kahn ran out of the shower room, screaming for help. It would have not been an incident in isolation. In these years, Many other detainees reported similar information. Some said they had seen shadowy figures moving through that steam. Others claimed they heard whispers and strange noises echoing off the tiled walls. The shower room became a place of fear where the barrier between life and death was almost blurred. It is said that since that night, many paranormal reports have surrounded the shower room. Inmates and guards have reported an intense feeling of coldness within the room while the water was hot. Some have seen shadowy figures moving through the steam, while others have heard whispers and strange noises echoing off the tile walls 12. Perhaps one of the most chilling accounts came from an ex-guard who worked at Alcatraz back in the 1950s. He recalled one incident where he was doing a late-night patrol of the shower room. As he walked through that room, the temperature seemed to drop, and way at the farthest end of the room, he saw a shadowy figure. The figure appeared to be facing him, and as he drew closer, it vanished into thin air. Shaken by the experience, the guard would never again enter the shower room alone. Many are the theories as to what could haunt the shower room. One of the most popular beliefs is residual spirits of former inmates who died under tragic circumstances. Alcatraz was a place of immense suffering, and many inmates met violent ends within its walls. It could be that the feelings and traumas experienced by those individuals created a residual energy that manifests as paranormal activity. Some say that the haunting is a result of the psychological toll of life at Alcatraz. The prison was designed to break the spirits of its inmates, and constant stress and fear may have resulted in hallucinations and other psychological phenomena. Therefore, one would expect the shower room to have been one of the primary locations for such experiences due to the general atmosphere of oppression and lack of privacy. This haunted shower room has long been a place of interest for many paranormal investigation groups. Ghost hunting teams have visited Alcatraz with cameras, audio recorders, and other tools to capture evidence from the paranormal world. Investigations like these have been very exciting in their turn. One investigation by a well-known paranormal research team recorded unexplained voices and footsteps in the shower room. The team also captured several photographs showing shadowy figures and strange light anomalies. These findings have only added to the legend of the haunted shower room and have drawn even more attention to this eerie location. Many visitors across the world who have visited Alcatraz today still claim to feel a certain uneasiness upon entering the shower room. Many describe the feeling of being watched, others feeling suddenly cold, and others hearing faint whispers. Such personal accounts add to the mystique of the shower room and suggest the haunting is still very much alive. One of the more interesting ones came from a tourist who visited Alcatraz during the early 2000s. While visiting the shower room, she felt the touch of a cold hand from a man to her shoulder. She turned around. No one was there. This experience shook her, and she actually mentioned that many other visitors had similar experiences in that very location 12. The story of the haunted shower room enhances the mystique and enigma of horrors about Alcatraz. It has stayed to become a grim pointer to the ruthless conditions dialectically thrown at the prisoners and the psychological toll of life in prison. Today, after so many years, Alcatraz remains a huge tourist attraction, and the shower room is definitely one of the most frequented and talked about spots on the island 12. What has become legends are the haunted shower room, which unfailingly continues to capture the imagination of Alcatraz visitors. History mixes with the supernatural and is laced with a semblance of dread and awe. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, stories and experiences of the shower room accurately describe the undying legacy left behind by Alcatraz as a place shrouded in mystery and intrigue. The tale of the haunted shower room of Alcatraz is much more than a ghost story. It is representative of the human experience within these prison walls. The fear, suffering, isolation, the emotions that the inmates felt, so imbued this place that it evokes an atmosphere where the feeling is that the past may lurk just beneath the surface. As people walk through the shower room today, they get a feeling of the lives that were changed forever by their time in Alcatraz and the spirits that may still haunt the location. Asterisk, asterisk, the utility corridor, haunting of Alcatraz, asterisk, asterisk. The haunting in the utility corridor is also directly linked to the 1962 escape attempt by Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence. Using makeshift tools over several months, the inmates dug through the walls of their cells into an unguarded utility corridor. Up this corridor, they made their escape on June 11, 1962, via a ventilation shaft to the roof, then down to the ground, where they launched a makeshift raft into the cold waters of San Francisco Bay 12. The next morning, the escape was discovered, and a manhunt of colossally extensive dimensions began. So, although vigorously looked for, the escapees were never found. To this day, it is not known whether they succeeded or failed in their attempt. The utility corridor, once a sign of hope and freedom for the escapees, had now turned into a place of fear and mystery to be for those left behind. And since the escape, many paranormal reports have originated from this utility corridor. Guards and maintenance workers describe hearing, among other noises, footsteps, whispers, and scraping metal against concrete. Other witnesses describe shadowy figures moving along the corridor, while yet others report a temperature drop accompanied by a feeling of being watched. One of the most hair-raising accounts is from a former maintenance worker who would often examine this corridor late at night. As he walked along, his footsteps echoing off the narrow passageway, he began to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind him. Every time that he turned around to look, there was nobody in sight. The footsteps continued to follow him right out of the corridor, and he left shaken and terrified. There are multiple theories regarding the haunting of the utility corridor. Some speculate that it is the spirits of the escapees who have more than likely died off in the cold waters of San Francisco Bay and came back to the place where their daring plan began. Other people suggest that the intense emotions followed by fear, which the inmates experienced during their escape, have left residual energy manifesting as paranormal activities. Another theory is that the haunting occurred because of the psychological toll of life at Alcatraz. It was a prison designed to break the spirits of its inmates, and the stress and fear could have contributed to hallucinations and other psychological phenomena throughout the period. In this scenario, the utility corridor, very dark indeed, and with a feeling of being pressed down, would have been a likely spot to manifest, at least initially. This haunted utility corridor had, in the past, been a target for many paranormal investigators. Ghost hunters visited Alcatraz in groups with cameras, audio recorders, and all other types of equipment that could be used to capture evidence of the supernatural. Many of such investigations have turned up interesting results. One investigation by a renowned paranormal investigative team captured evidence of unexplained voices and footsteps in the corridor. Furthermore, the team captured several photographs showing shadowy figures and strange light anomalies. Only adding to the legend of the haunted utility corridor, these findings have drawn even more attention to this eerie location. Many who visit Alcatraz today describe the uneasy feeling that overcomes them upon entrance into the utility corridor. Some described a feeling of passing into a place where one is being constantly watched. Others spoke of having felt cold or even hearing faint whispers. These personal accounts raise the mystique of the corridor and suggest the haunting is very much alive today. One of the more interesting stories came from a tourist who visited Alcatraz in the early 2000s. He was touring the utility corridor when he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He turned around, but no one was there. To say the least, he was shaken by his experience and would later find out others reported similar experiences in the same location. 12. The story of the haunted utility corridor gives mystique to the horror of Alcatraz and acts as a grim reminder of the harsh conditions the inmates faced and the psychological toll of life in prison. Today, it has become one of the most popular tourist spots, and the utility corridor is definitely one of the most frequented and talked about places on the island. The legend of the haunted utility corridor survives as a central impression in the minds of visitors to Alcatraz. It is the joining of history and the supernatural that makes for fear and fascination. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, stories and experiences about this corridor bear testimony to the fact that Alcatraz is spelled with mystery and intrigue. Moving on to the scary stories associated with the haunted Alcatraz, theories have been given forth which eventually show the creativeness of the administration in scaring and intimidating. Some believe it to be the restless spirits of old prisoners. Others go on explaining the hard emotions, struggle, and torture within those walls, which have left a residue expressing itself as paranormal activity in this prison. Whether it be the psychological toll of life at Alcatraz or something more supernatural, these stories capture the imagination and keep Alcatraz legend alive. If you enjoyed exploring the haunted history of Alcatraz and going through these chilling theories, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and the ring bell icon to stay updated with more spine-chilling stories and eerie explorations. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious and stay spooky.